I think a nonfiction book would have been easier, but I wanted the emotional experience. I wanted people to feel like they are there, that this is inspiring them to think about their own relationship with money. And so I think it's much easier to read. Like I said, it bypasses the ego, it bypasses like the resistance, and people just go in. For the right reader, they go in and they're like, I've got to finish this. I want to go back and read it again. I want to journal the second time through, which is just making my heart sing.
Do you think money takes up more life space than it should? On this show, we discuss with and share stories from artists, authors, entrepreneurs, and advisors about how they mindfully minimize the time and energy spent thinking about money. Join your host, Jonathan Dio, and learn how to put money in its place and get more out of life.
Hey, welcome back. On this episode of the Mindful Money Podcast, I'm chatting once again with Leisa Peterson. Leisa is an old friend in the industry. She agreed to be on the podcast before I had any live episodes. You were my second guest 2 years ago. So you ended up being the second interviewee many years ago. And I just want to say thanks for coming back. And everyone can go and listen to that episode. We'll cover her background a little bit more there. We'll cover a little bit of it today, but go back and listen to episode 2 of the Mindful Money Podcast. You'll hear all about where she comes from and her history and all that kind of stuff there. We're going to talk about her book today. Leisa is a money mindset coach, author, financial educator who helps people transform their relationship with money. She's got over 25 years of experience in financial services. She founded WealthClinic to help people overcome financial anxiety, which there's more of today than there was when she started, I'm sure, and build wealth from this sort of holistic perspective. She's the author of The Mindful Millionaire, which we talked about last time, and she hosts the Art of Abundance podcast, which combines practical financial strategies with mindfulness practices. She told me just a second ago she's on the way to Hawaii today to meditate for 5 days, so she's deep in that practice as well. I love having her on the podcast, and we're going to talk today about her new book, The Money Catalyst, Your Guide to Prosperity, Freedom, and Living Your Best Life. Leisa, welcome back to the Mindful Money Podcast.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm such a fan of your work. I think I was actually stalking you, and then I reached out because you're awesome and doing amazing things.
Thank you. I'm supposed to say that about you. You're awesome. You do amazing things. I love what you do. So just remind everybody, where are you calling from? Where do you call home?
Sedona currently, but from the Bay Area originally. So we've been in Sedona for 9 years. My husband's a general contractor, so we've built some houses. We have some Airbnbs here. We're actually in escrow to sell one of our houses here. So it's a beautiful place to live if you haven't been.
And I see you on Facebook moving all over the place all the time, but the base is in Sedona.
Yes. My daughter just bought a place, her second place in South Lake Tahoe. So we're spending the summer. When I get back from Hawaii, we go to Tahoe. So it's a really good life. Yes.
I have 3 sort of areas that I want to talk about today. First, I want to know, you may be able to answer this really quickly, but I'll have some follow-up. The first one is, I want to know how much of Mirabel's story is autobiographical. Second, I want to talk about the writing of the book. It's not a direction I would have expected. And then third, I want to talk about the lessons, catalysts in the awake process. So knowing us, we probably will go completely astray at some point. Does this all work?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Perfect.
Start in the beginning. How much of Mirabel's story is autobiographical?
A lot is autobiographical. You knew. Oh my gosh. I wish it wasn't, but I've been doing this work for a while and there's always new opportunities for discovery. I had a book launch party not too long ago, and Jenny, who inspired the character of Leela in the book, she was on the call, and we were talking about this trip to Paris that we took exactly 2 years ago, May of 2023. And she has always struggled with money, and yet she has a very abundant mindset. And I took her to Paris as a thank you for inspiring the Mindful Millionaire. And a couple hours into the trip, the personalities of Leela and Mirabel already came into play, whereas I was doing some scarce things and she was totally abundant. And yeah, it just went, I should say uphill, but I'll say downhill because I was going to learn some really big things that would lead to me writing this book as a result of spending 10 days in Paris with, I want to say Leela, but Jenny.
So what did you learn in Paris? What was the trigger in Paris that set things off?
It was little things where I was counting euros and Jenny was like, wait, you are very wealthy and successful. And here you are, like paying attention to these very small things that mean nothing. And she called me out a few times, but what really did it was I've been to Paris many times, and there's quite a beautiful thing that happens when you're with people like Jenny, where she has a very childlike wonder. And seeing Paris for the first time really woke me up to the fact that every day could be like a first time experience. And it was all about being in the present moment. And so all these years of meditating and reading, and I was like, okay, here we go. And I didn't know it was transforming me as much until I was flying home, first class on Polaris, which I had never done before. I splurged. And this movie comes on, Living with Bill Nighy. It was nominated for an Academy Award a few years ago. He's living this very scarce life. He gets this death sentence. And I kid you not, like the whole thing all of a sudden came into reality where it was like, I thought I had this figured out and I actually don't. And I'm just sobbing. People probably thought I needed a therapist on the plane because I couldn't stop crying. But it was like I had seen a whole other life that I could live easily, but I needed to change my mind in order to do it.
I didn't think we'd veer off so quickly, but we're going to do it. So I have a bunch of friends, and I am among my friend group, like the one who built a company and sold a company. I've got more means. I am in great shape. I'm also the one that's the most nervous about spending money, and will pinch pennies, and will set my thermostat at 67 instead of 71. And like I'm still that guy, and I can't get rid of it. We did the same thing in our first conversation where we were like, well, how do we? I do the work too. Like I know scarcity's there. I can't get rid of it. I can't shake it. I can, for a moment, turn a corner and say, okay, I'm going to take this trip. I'm going to fly first class. I'm going to stay in a nice place. I'm going to eat at great restaurants. And if I plan it all out, I'm fine. But in the moment, okay, Jonathan, do you want to go to this hole in the wall or do you want to go to this white tablecloth restaurant? I choose the hole in the wall almost every time. Like, why is that? Like, where does that come from?
It starts really early in life, right? Like there's so much data about it. And I've had to really embrace the love of that part of myself and also realize that I'm the only one here that can change it. And it's probably going to be work for the rest of my life. I didn't believe that before. I really did think that it was just going to fly away, the more money I had, or that I would just reach this utopian place in my mind. And I'm like, I'm in a really good place in my mind, and that I'm still counting those euros. So it's
Crazy.
funny. You have to laugh. I do a lot.
It was just there. It was on the ground for somebody to pick up. You used the word scare city as Mirabelle's starting point. And I'm like, it's perfect. Scarcity. It's like a perfect, what is that? It's not a palindrome. I don't know. I looked up the etymological foundation of the word scarcity thinking, is it scarcity? Is that where it comes from? Not at all where it comes from, but it's perfect. And I've never heard it used. Did you coin that or did you see that somewhere?
I don't know. It was just came through. This whole thing of writing a fictional book literally was like the most creative thing I've ever done. And so things would come and I'm like, is anybody going to believe this? And then the more I wrote, it was like, oh, scarcity, that's it. That's where we live. That's where we don't want to live anymore. And I had a lot of fun with that because you read that. It's funny, a little generational thing. There were some changes. Originally, it was like Rod Sterling kind of narrating his voice, like you're trapped in this Rod Sterling. And then I realized my character is 34 years old. Nobody's going to know what that is. So I changed it to like doom scrolling, through your apps. But it's still that like sort of voice in the back of your head, like here we are and we're here again. What do we do? Because it really sucks, but we can't get out of it. Like that was what was coming through.
Did you come up with the phrase scare city or the transition from scarcity to scare? I've never seen it before. I've read a lot of personal finance stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know because I've never seen it written in a book.
Leisa, take credit.
Okay. Well, I came up with it. I mean, just it feels like there's no new ideas. I don't know.
I've literally never read it before. And I was like, it's been there on the ground the whole time.
Okay, I'll
Anyone
own
could have
it.
picked it up. Anyone could have picked it up. You picked it up. Good stuff. I'm wondering, are there any, in terms of the autobiographical content, are there any lessons that come out of here that are just like right out of your heart? That this is, this is something that I maybe was afraid to share, but I'm sharing. Boom.
A ton of them, but I will say, and I'll drag my husband into this because he was really pivotal in this relationship between Maribel and Ethan. He and I have been together since college, so like 38 years. And this book changed our relationship for the better because I think I was giving him messages like things that Ethan was doing that we still had problems with in our relationship. And when he read it, he's like, are you trying to tell me something? I'm like, maybe, maybe. But the relationship dynamics of control and releasing control and
Mm.
questioning if somebody should have that much control over your life. And what's fascinating to me is the feedback, especially from folks like us that really do pay a lot of attention, or therapists and work with couples a lot. They're like, whoa, this is going deep into things that they're seeing all the time with their clients. So we're not alone, but I was willing to bring it there. And there would be days where I was just sobbing because I didn't even know that there was a better way to do even our relationship.
Yeah. I mean, we know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. Like it takes that moment of, to really awaken to, oh, I've been doing this a weird way this whole time. Not necessarily wrong because you do your best, but I could do better. I can always do better. I'm curious about the decision to write a fictional narrative instead of a traditional like how to. Were you worried about this choice? I mean,
I had a book deal on the table. My publisher, St. Martin's, had asked me to write a book about abundance and nonfiction book, and they wanted me to workshop it with my community. And so I started workshopping it, and I kind of got stuck in the beginning because I just didn't want to write something about abundance that everyone had read before. And I went back on a trip. We were on a road trip, and I was like, well, what's the most abundant thing? And then I remembered the trip to Paris because this was a year ago that I started writing this book. And I wrote the short story, but with Maribel and Leela, but inspired by Jenny and I. I wrote that short story of just the trip in Paris, and I gave it to the community thinking it would be a great entree to a nonfiction book. And the community was like, oh my gosh, what happens next? And I was like, well, that's the story, And they're like, no, 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 there's something here. Like, you're actually really good at writing this fictional thing. And I didn't totally believe them. And for a while, I just kept writing and they'd read it and give feedback. Simultaneous, there were these journal questions that I was giving everybody after I gave them the chapter. And it was real time. Like, I'd send them a chapter, we'd all meet, they'd fill out the journal questions, and then I'd start to write the next chapter. Like, that's how this book came to be. And people started having breakthroughs from those journal questions that I had never witnessed in the past 10 years of doing this online coaching and working with people, like huge breakthroughs. I was like, what's happening with a fiction story that is changing people in ways that nonfiction doesn't? And so I started getting pretty keen on it. At some point, maybe a month and a half in, people were like, don't even write a nonfiction book, just write a fiction book. So I go back to the publisher and they were like, maybe, but probably not. Like, it just is a much harder book to sell. It's not as marketable, even though Bob Berg in The Go-Giver, he's a good friend of mine. And he was telling me it's possible, it's possible. It was like, yeah, but not necessarily for a person who's never done this before. And so I ended up parting ways and saying, I'm going to do this for better or for worse, because I think that this could make a bigger difference in the world.
And Bob Berg would know, like he's published how many?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it was, there's some of the money psychology when you read it in sort of an academic how-to nonfiction kind of a place, it gets kind of judgy and dry. And I'm wondering if the narrative actually just opens it up and it's maybe easier to write, but also just easier to hear in a narrative format.
Yeah, I wouldn't say easier to write, but I would say easier to hear. I kid you not. I just spent a year working on this book without really working much. because it needed to be rewritten like 150
Yeah.
times. So I think a nonfiction book would have been easier, but I wanted the emotional experience. I wanted people to feel like they are there, that this is inspiring them to think about their own relationship with money. And so I think it's much easier to read. Like I said, it bypasses the ego, it bypasses like the resistance, and people just go in. For the right reader, they go in and they're like, I've got to finish this. I want to go back and read it again. I want to journal the second time through, which is just making my heart sing.
Are you hearing people that say, "Yeah, I read it. It was great, but I didn't do the journaling"?
Not yet. If
Okay.
anything, people say, I want to go back. When I did it with the workshop, I have about 1,000 pages of journaling because people had accountability. And I think that I probably at some point will do some of that where people do like to know that I'm waiting for their assignments. They're like, okay, I'll do it. That's human nature. So they did do it when I was waiting.
Can you talk about the I don't know if this is intentional or if this is just something I thought of. Is the Mindful Millionaire kind of a workbook for the Money Catalyst? Is that kind of how they work
Yeah.
together?
Exactly. Perfect world, the money catalyst would be first, and
Yeah.
then the mindful millionaire, you come in and you use it to like dive even deeper. One supports the other. Now I'm having people, obviously, a lot of my community has already read The Mindful Millionaire, and they're coming to this, I think, out of a sense of enjoyment and pleasure in reading a story, but they're also having a lot of fun in like uncovering new things that they didn't even know was part of their money story.
It sounds like this was a little bit more because of the narrative nature of it. It sounds like it's more challenging to write. Was there anything that was emotionally challenging to write, emotionally difficult to put on the page, since it is so autobiographical?
Yeah. So let's just talk about like what's happening in the world and this book. So when I first wrote it, it was written from a white woman's perspective, right? Born and raised in the Bay Area. I have a lot of diversity in my friends and my community, but I had never written a fictional book before. So I didn't realize that there was a problem in the first draft. And thankfully, people in my community, namely Black women, I noticed something about their journaling that was very different than white women journaling in the book. And I'm like,
Mm.
what is going on? Like, I didn't understand. That was my naivete, I guess. And I went to a few of my clients and I was like, can you please tell me what's happening as you read this book? Because your journaling isn't going very deep. And I feel like I'm missing something. And I got an earful and I went through a very much of a dark night of the soul as a result of it, because I realized that when you're writing fiction, if you don't have diversity in those characters and diversity in what's going on in that story, it's going to be like what rich white woman's experience of like what this looks like. And so I went to my community and I got help in creating the character of Tanya, and
Mm.
it changed the whole dynamics of the book because she is just like a close friend of mine that I've grown up with. But I needed to have these conversations of diversity and inclusion and things that are super central to my life and my heart. I needed to bring them into the book. The problem is that when I went to try and write Tanya, the reason I fell apart is at first there was going to be some antagonism. Like Tanya was going to be more provoking to Mirabelle, and in the middle of the night, after I wrote the first draft of it, I woke up and I was like, in this messed up society that we live in, Tanya can't provoke Mirabelle without backlash. It's not allowed. And it just broke me. Like I was lucky my husband was gone, because I think I just sobbed for like 6 hours straight, because my whole life was flashing before me trying to write this character and realizing how easy I've had it and how much harder other people have. I will also say that when that second draft got written, I went back and workshopped it with my community, and there were white women in the community that didn't like that character.
Didn't like the rewrite.
They didn't see the first version. These were new people that they were like, kind of what's happening in the world right now, depending on your political beliefs. If they were in one camp, they felt like, oh, she's trying to get a handout. And I was like, oh my gosh, the world that we live in, like you can't win. And it again taught me a lot about the struggles of making sure that I was writing a book that was reflective. Because here's the point, nonfiction books, they meet you where you're at because it's a prescriptive, like, here's what to do, or here's what I'm thinking, or here's this. They see you as the author and them as the reader. But when you're bringing people into a fiction book, you want them to feel like they're right there
Yeah.
alongside of the characters, connecting and relating and understanding. If I couldn't do that, then I didn't want to write a fictional book.
So is Tanya creative, or was Tanya from the experiences you've heard about and worked with other women on that don't, present like you?
She is a collection of the feedback that I got from my clients and back and forth, where I'm like, am I portraying this character in a way that you feel like you're included here? It's not about the color even, of your skin, or like, none of that matters. And I don't highlight that, but there needed to be room for that. And that was all that I'm sure I'm just scratching the surface on this, but I'm sharing this because I do think it's really reflective of like the differences that we take. We just don't know oftentimes.
Yeah. It's the emotional sense of it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's easy to say, prescriptively, point A, point B, point C, you do this, you'll be set, you save, you invest, you're good. But all the, like, how does that work in life, on the ground? Very difficult to write.
I really always wanted to make sure, because this is a central message in what I teach, that it is not the same for every one of us. Like, even if I've come from the wrong side of the tracks and I've worked really hard and I've built wealth, like, that looks one way, but other people have had different experiences. And to assume that we all have the same ramp is not fair. It's not helpful. And I wanted to bring that in. And so Tanya gave me the ability to bring in a more open conversation of like, well, first of all, let's not focus on anybody but ourselves. Like, let's focus on our own experiences. But sadly, people do, compare constantly when it comes to money with each other. And I was like, well, this is a great opportunity for me to be like, let's just focus on you and realize that we can have more compassion and be more conscious of the world around us at the same time.
It's too much of a measuring stick, just dollars. Too much of a measuring stick. I want to dip a toe into the book a little bit. In Catalyst 4, Nurture Your Inner Wealth, you sort of guide Mirabelle through a process of identifying her emotional triggers around money, particularly during a conversation with her mentor. So why have Mirabelle revisit a childhood memory at this point? How do you see this exercise shifting like a reader's relationship with abundance?
It's back to those early money stories. Mirabelle hires Maya to help her understand what would that journey to abundance look like. And so multiple conversations that they have are diving into, first of all, Mirabelle's relationship with herself, her relationship with money and scarcity and abundance, and then also with the people in her life. And so she goes backwards into these experiences because she needs to uncover the guilt, the regret, the resentment, the lack of forgiveness that she's holding in her heart before she's able to move beyond those things. And having done this kind of work, especially this past 10 years as a coach and working on mindset, I do not see people make material changes in their life until they go back and have some sort of forgiveness process in their practice. And there's lots of different ways we can get there, but this has been the one that has been most effective, between me and my clients. And I wanted people to see what that looks like.
Are you both Mirabelle and Maya in that?
Pretty much.
I'm wondering if you had a money coach or if you have been your own money coach.
I have not had a money coach. Interesting enough, I have had spiritual teachers all along the way. And so one of my teachers, Holly Riley, back in 2015, and I've been on this spiritual journey since 1999, but in 2015, she worked with me to really open my heart. Buddhism kind of opened the crown chakra and the upper, but Holly helped me move into the heart. Interesting enough, the reason I'm going on retreat is I'm now exploring the lower chakras in a very ugly way, but that's a whole other conversation. But the heart, Holly helped me, and parts of Maya are definitely inspired by Holly Riley.
Okay. Yeah. So another thing is inside the book, you offer the journaling prompts throughout. It's sort of as a way to explore our own financial beliefs in real time, as you've just mentioned. So in Catalyst 6, Amplify Your Finances, Mirabelle reframes her approach to budgeting after a setback. There's a setback. She comes back after the setback and reframes this approach to budgeting. How do you think readers will apply this?
Yeah. I'm hoping that by the time they reach this part of the process, they're thinking to themselves, like, it's time to look under the covers. It's time to look at the practical aspects of my experiences with money. And I love doing that after the mindset work. So it's a build up to that place where, in this case, she's looking at her own situation, but she's really learning probably more by, and this is how I learn too. I like to teach others. Like, I learn while I'm teaching. And so she's showing her mom how to do it better. And in the course of it, learning how to manage money in a more responsible way without relying just on Ethan to tell her what to do.
Yeah. So just as you're talking, is this whole idea of the mindset comes first and then practical application comes second. I absolutely and totally agree. But is the mindset work, and this, I think this brings in the DEI piece as well. I have always viewed the mindset stuff as get your mind right so that you can follow the prescriptive steps, right? I think you're coming at it differently than I have come at it. And I think you're coming at it with this, you need to embrace whatever mindset you have, love on yourself, forgive yourself, and then you'll be enabled. You have to trust that you will be enabled to make better decisions and be more authentic and all this kind of stuff. I don't know if it's a gender difference or if it's a dominant culture difference. I don't know what the difference is, but I'm like, okay, this is what I have to do to get there. Boom, I'm going to do this and this and this. I'm going to get up early. I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to all these kind of lessons. You're saying something a little different that I think if I pursued, I think I would be able to better get past some of those scarcity issues that keep coming back. Because I turn away from that in my own life. I need to turn towards it and love on it a little bit. That's what it sounds like. Is that fair?
I think so. The awake process is this really simple process, right? Introduced in the book. And I kid you not, like, it came to me as I was writing the book. I had not used it before. I was like, wow, this is really powerful. And I've used it since then. Well, the other day I was having a total meltdown, like my toddler moment. Something had happened with the book. It just shut down. It wasn't available, even though we had just done this launch. And I was like, I'm going to go onto Instagram and I'm going to film myself going through Awake. And I have no idea if I'll be deleting it at the end, like, because I don't know what's going to happen. And so Awake is like, become aware of the problem, become willing to look at the problem from a very open and curious perspective, accept, feel grateful for whatever's happening. And then it's an acronym, right? And then kindness. This is the fourth step in the 5-step process. I had no idea that it was not going to be until I got to kindness that I completely lost it. And it went back to my childhood. I had a father who wanted great things for me. And I mean, I've done well, but when I made a mistake, instead of hugging me and being compassionate and loving on me and saying it was going to be okay, he'd be like, you need to do better next time.
Yeah.
And so when this happened with the book, it was all on me. I totally made a mistake. And I got to kindness and I was like, I can't, what? Like, okay, I can be kind to myself. I'm trying to be kind to myself. And after I did the process, the last step is embodiment. Like, can you embody these parts of this experience and these parts of you that are coming forward? I forgot about it. Like, it was like the problem just totally went away. And I'm using that to answer your question, because here's what I've learned over 58 years on this planet is that it is really easy for me and probably other people to give ourselves a hard time, especially when we're down. And life often has more trips and fails than we care to admit. And so this idea of being kind and generous and loving on ourselves has been the most difficult lesson and the most productive lesson, because if I can get there, I'm instantly in an abundant state of mind. But if I can't, I am my own worst enemy.
So I'm a mindfulness teacher now. I've been doing that for I've got 2 months under my belt, 3 months under my belt now. So I love it. But one of the most difficult things to teach is self-compassion. We do not do that well. It's very interesting because, RAIN, the practice, recognize, allow, investigate, and Tara Brach changed it. It used to be non-identification. Now it is nurture, right? So Tara Brach added kindness. But before Tara Brach and before modern, Western mindfulness, it was more prescriptive. It was don't identify with that. So I would always pursue that. And that makes a lot more sense to me. Nurture seems squishy to me. It seems like, of course you want kindness, but that's because I'm no good at self-kindness. None at all. It's cultural. This is a deeply cultural thing.
Yeah. But it does change everything. I was blown away that the process worked as well as it did. And I'm so excited because I have a feeling people will start using it more and more. And they'll come back and be like, okay, it worked. It totally worked.
All we got to do is love ourselves. It's so simple.
Yeah.
So hard. So hard. So there's an enormous amount of noise out there, and I want to help people make practical decisions, but also good psychological choices. So what's one specific practice from the book that a reader can do out of the gate that's going to lead to better personal financial success from both a practical and a psychological standpoint?
So a lesson learned from my 27-year-old entrepreneur daughter, which is highlighted in the book when we get into the practical stuff, is become very comfortable with no. And what I mean by that is my daughter has built this incredible content creation company over the past couple of years. She's making really great money. She's living her best life. And when she started negotiating with all these brands, she at first had no clients, had no experience, had nothing. And yet she would wait until she heard no to know that she was at the top of what she could charge the company for a reel or for a story or for something else, because Instagram is her big platform. And watching this over a couple year period has not just doubled or tripled or quadrupled, but something in the power of her being able to be so comfortable with no, whether that be with a vendor and what they're paying her, with a vendor who's like, absolutely not. You do not fit our brand. I don't care how much money you throw at us. The answer is no. To no to people who don't agree necessarily with what she's doing or what she is all about. And I am seeing that lead to very quick wealth building, incredible confidence. She's really good at business. And it's all because of her feeling comfortable with a word that in my generation was not something that women were told to feel really good about. And I know I'm not alone. I've had this conversation with hundreds of women, and I'm sure men also feel this, but yeah, I'm totally guilty of that. So the lesson is become comfortable with no, understand that you'll win some and lose some, but that you won't know if you're actually being paid in your job at the top level that you want to be paid if you don't reach that point of no and become okay with hearing it. You haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah, no in terms of we don't want to do business with you. No in terms of we're not going to pay that much. Yeah, you got to push the limits. And the only way you know the limit is there is if you hear no. That's fantastic. Learn to accept no. Learn to, or not accept it, but hear it, because you're going to hear it. Everyone's going to hear it. Lots and lots and lots of no. Okay, so that's what to do. Focus on accepting or understanding that no is part of it. What's one thing that listeners probably already doing, maybe they've been told to do, that they should stop doing that would lead to better outcomes?
I think stop thinking that you're right all the time.
Humble.
Mm-hmm. That has been showing up inside of this book and the lessons that I've learned over and over again, that we get very righteous about our relationship with money. We think we've got the answers. We think we've got it figured out. But granted, I have no idea if this makes you richer or poorer, but I will say that when you approach life from a more beginner's mindset and get curious about what people know, what people think, what you think, you're going to live a lot happier.
The outcome can be as different as you want, positive or negative, but the path will be easier for sure. Yeah, I agree. Just before we get to sort of something called a wrap here at the end, I'd like to go back to personal. As you know, can you name a place you visited that really had a deep impact on you today? And what was the impact?
of course, Paris, but I'm going to add another one. Right after Paris, 3 months later, I got invited to speak at a retreat in Bali. And I did not like Bali when I first got there. It was total chaos. It felt like fish swimming. I've never seen people like riding motorcycles on the sidewalk and like chaos everywhere. And I was like, these people are insane. I thought I might ride on the back of a motorcycle. There's no way. I have a motorcycle license. I've had it for years. And that's my first impression. So a week into Bali, I got invited to go out with a group of motorcyclists on our scooters in Bali. Like I would be on my own bike. And I was like, I'm probably going to die. And I'm okay with that because I'm so freaking scared of what I'm about to do. But I'm going to be in the middle of the pack and there will be people in the front. I can follow them and people behind me. Maybe I'll survive. So we go out and we did this day of traveling all over the island. And at the end of the day, well, I lived, first of all, because I wouldn't be here. We end up out in these rice paddies and the sky could not have been like more perfect. And it was just like this fog, which was probably smoke, and the sun and people wearing those hats and people getting off of work. I felt like one of those moments where you just like put your arms out, but I wasn't going to let go of the steering wheel. But it was like, this is my life. And I just faced death to have it. And I am so grateful that I am here and getting to see this experience because this is like right out of a picture that I never thought I would ever have in my life.
I hear it. There's a few themes that are just kind of, we're getting to the end, but there's some themes. Like one, you cry a lot. Two, you're very grateful. And you're also maintaining this curiosity, this beginner's mind as much as humanly possible. So that's three things I think you're sharing just by being, which is awesome. So we're going to make sure all that stuff is in the notes. How do people find you? How do people connect with you?
So a great way is to go to moneycatalyst.book.com. We'll give them a secret passageway because they listen to this conversation. So even if you haven't gotten the book and you want to check it out, you want to start reading it, you can go to that page, write in your name, your email, put in 01, and that will get you all the free bonuses that come with the book. But you'll get the beginning of the book, meditations, you'll get a journal. But I feel like that's the best way to kind of see if this is something that you want to explore. And you'll get some goodies.
Thanks, Leisa. I appreciate it once again. I always love having a conversation with you. You brighten my day and everyone else's day, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at mindful.money. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/mindfulmoney. We'll be sure to read those out on future episodes.